Welcome to the Mighty Emotions podcast. I'm your host, Giselle. I'm a certified emotions coach, and I teach you how to respond better to your emotions so you can feel better in your life. My mission is to show you how to work with your emotions to become more emotionally resilient. Your emotions are not designed to overpower you, they're designed to empower you. On this podcast, I share what our emotions are, how to understand them and work with them, and the tools you need to reclaim your power and get unstuck from emotional pain so you can find fulfillment in your life again. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's get into the episode. Welcome back to another episode of the Mighty Emotions podcast. I really hope that you are taking care of yourself. I hope that you are doing well. I know that summer is this exciting season where there's a lot of stuff going on, and I hope that you're enjoying yourself. But if you're not, if you're struggling right now, I hope that you're taking care of yourself. The work that I am doing with my clients, the work that I'm doing with my community, the work that is going into this podcast, I hope is helping you to work on yourself and connect to your emotions, but through softness, through loving kindness toward yourself. I don't say it enough, and I try to say it in every episode to be gentle with yourself, but I really mean that. I want you to treat yourself as a fragile person if you feel fragile. You know, I don't want you to be so critical and so harsh on yourself. And I'm opening up this episode like this because I had someone reach out to me, and the message has really stayed with me and really left me feeling like I recognize the responsibility I have in this show to continue to remind you that this is personal development from an emotionally empowered place. It is from an empathic place. That means empathy towards ourselves, self compassion, remembering that you have the power to punish yourself, but you can choose not to, right? That you can be more tolerant with yourself where you're at, because that is the key to healing. That is the key to overcoming any kind of past trauma. And I can tell you that as someone who has experienced so much trauma from her earliest years through her formative years into adulthood. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of trauma that I've experienced. I write about some of it in the intro to my book, but I'll never go into detail publicly because it's horrific. um, and I want you to know that if it's possible for me to be here, I mean, on the last episode, if you listen to it, where I was sharing about coming back from vacation, I was sharing in it how I wake up every day happy. And that isn't something fake. That's something that I proudly profess because that was not my reality for so long, right? And I was able to go from that misery, despair, hopelessness to where I am today, which is hopeful, optimistic, excited for life, grateful, so grateful. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm always talking about the gratitude, right? But that's not put on, that's not something I'm forcing myself to do. That is what we can achieve when we process and move through our emotions. But that process of moving through our emotions, of making peace with our past and loving ourselves, nurturing ourselves, that process isn't fun. I don't think I've made an episode about that yet. But every time I work with a coaching client and we have our first session, they come back to me the second week and they're like, I feel worse than before. I feel awful. This week was so hard. It's so rough. What's going on? And I'm like, yeah, I don't sell you on that, right? I'm kind of outing myself right now, by the way, if you're a future client. So now you'll know that you do feel worse initially. When you open yourself up to feeling your emotions, it all comes up. All the stuff that you push down, all the stuff that you run from, all the stuff that you distract yourself from, it all comes up when you open yourself up to it. And it's not a great feeling. It's not. It's not. But it's necessary to move through that discomfort and recognize that it is discomfort. And your resistance to it is what transforms it from discomfort into pain. And your further resistance to it is what transforms it into suffering. And the longer we hold on to emotional pain, the greater our suffering, right? So when you first start to do this work, it kind of gets worse before it gets better. I don't know if you've ever done a physical detox of any sort, like a juice cleanse or anything like that, a fast or anything, but your body feels rough. It feels rough for the first few days of that fast or that cleanse or whatever it is, as the toxins are leaving your body. And then you start to feel better. And then by the time you finish, you feel amazing because you've kind of cleared out the old stuff. So an emotional detox feels like that. It feels really rough at the beginning. And that's why it's so important to have the ongoing support as you're going through that. Either it's our one-on-one or it's in the community, having the ongoing support to just hold on to as you move through that is so important. When I started doing this work, I had a community. I had a support group that I was going to every week, sometimes every day, sometimes twice a day. And I'm so grateful for that, right? Because I had my friends there and I had this space where I can go and talk about my shit and I could get it out there and I wasn't carrying it anymore. And gradually, I released and I released and I released, and I felt that freedom that comes with that release. But what I want to talk about on today's episode, because of this message that I received, is the panic that we can experience when we are new to this kind of work and we're trying to do it by ourselves, because this podcast is meant to help you with kind of self-coaching, and the community is meant to be a self-coaching platform for you. So it's important to have these disclaimers riddled throughout there. So I'm putting that disclaimer in this episode that that panic that comes up is due to the unfamiliarity with that emotion. It is due to not being accustomed to dealing with what you're feeling. It's the opposite of what you're used to. It's going to scare you. You're going to feel fear around it, right? That heart is going to start beating faster. You're going to start to panic. You're going to have racing thoughts. That is something that you can expect when you begin to do the work of processing your emotions and feeling your emotions and being open to them, being emotionally available for yourself. It's going to be a detox of sorts. It's going to feel worse before it gets better. So this episode is really to give you advice of how to navigate that. And the first piece of advice is to get support. Get support. Find somebody that you can talk to, whether it's a therapist, whether it's online therapy, whether it's a support group online in person, whether it's your best friend. Let somebody that you know and trust know what you're doing. Let somebody that you trust know that you're navigating this thing. In the community I'm creating is going to be a forum for you to be able to share, right? And just get it out, because the point isn't for someone to fix it, because that's not where we're doing this work. The point is to not carry it. So if you're having these racing thoughts, journal about it. If you're having these racing thoughts, speak out loud to yourself. There are many different avenues that you can take, but get support outside of yourself. Don't just be ruminating, sitting with these thoughts. Don't just be carrying it all within you. It needs to be released. It needs to be detoxed. It needs to come up. It needs to come out. The other piece of advice is to be aware that this is part of the process. It's normal. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you or that you're broken in some way. You are not broken. There is nothing wrong with you. You may be wounded. You may have had awful things happen, but that doesn't mean that you can't recover from that. It doesn't mean you can't overcome that. It doesn't mean you can't move beyond that. But again, going back to number one, get help. Don't try to do it on your own. Be aware that this is a part of the process. Trust that what's happening is part of the process. And keep in mind, third point, keep in mind what's important here. Keep in mind why you're doing this. What is your intention? That is really what gets us through. So I talked a lot about that on my last episode in a different way, but when I started doing this work of healing, it felt awful at first. I shook. I describe it again in the intro to my book, but I had a rough time with that. And what kept me going through that, in addition to the support that I had and people I could call or text or send voice notes to as I was going through that, was the knowing of why I was doing it, right? Because I didn't want to keep the same pattern of avoiding, of running, of not dealing with I didn't want to keep repeating that pattern. I was exhausted from it. I was sick of it. I wanted to experience something different. And I knew that the only way to do that was to do something different. So even though it felt rough, even though I couldn't see the other side of it, I was so clear that I'm doing this so that I can experience something different. Uh, and and that kept me going. So remind yourself why you're doing this work, right? Again, it's like if you're doing a physical cleanse or a physical detox of some kind, you know you're doing it because maybe you haven't been in your optimal health and you're trying to reset your body, or maybe you've been having some health issues and you want to get back to a good place with your health. You know why. So even as it feels rough, even as it feels horrible, you're not thinking about giving up, because you're thinking, your focus, your attention is going on to what's important to you, which is getting better. So get support, right? Trust the process and focus on the ultimate goal. Focus on what's ultimately important, which is that you get better, right? We don't get better by ourselves. We don't heal in a vacuum. We are not an island, right? And without any kind of compassion toward ourselves, it's going to be really, really difficult, this process. Without being patient with the process, without being tolerant with ourselves, maybe you're going to be snappy for a few days. For all of my ladies with periods out there or who get PMS, now I don't really experience it, but there are times when I'm just hormonal and snappy, and I just kind of acknowledge, oh, okay, this isn't the day for me to go and be social butterfly or something. I adapt to how I'm feeling. I adapt my circumstances to what's coming up for me and what I need. So if you need to do that, if you need to take a break, a pause, if you need to take a day off work, if you need to do something that's for you, that's for self-care, do that. Rest in that, right? Because all of this is a part of the process, which means that it's a step in the process. It's temporary. It's not going to last forever. And the panic feeling is going to come. And what I want you to do in response to that panic feeling is, again, reach out to someone for support. Don't keep it in by yourself, but get really present with your body. In this work that I do, I attract a lot of overthinkers, because when we experience trauma, we tend to disconnect from our bodies. We tend to be way more in our minds, always living in a different time frame, always kind of having a million questions. I still tend to do that sometimes. It's kind of my default. And so it's really important, when we notice that that is not supporting us, that is not being helpful to us. Grounding is what we come back to. And when that panic happens, you need to ground. You need to neutralize that panic by either moving your body, getting out of your head, doing something that gets you into your physical present moment circumstances. One thing that we don't realize is that whether it's scrolling on Instagram or it's watching something or whatever it is, maybe it's just daydreaming, your mind and your body are often not in the same place at the same time. Your mind is in Italy because that's where you wish you were, and your body is in your bedroom, freaking out, right? Or your mind is thinking about a past experience, visualizing it, reliving it, retelling it, whatever it may be, and your body is in your bedroom, right? Or your body is reliving a past experience and your mind is at work. Like, our minds and our bodies need to work together for us to be regulated, for us to be calm, for us to be stable mentally, emotionally. And so part of this work is about neutralizing that emotional energy, just neutralizing the intensity of it by getting into our bodies, or getting our bodies moving and getting that energy to flow. In the back of my book, I share with you ways of honoring your emotions. And there are ways to honor our emotions when they're heavier emotions like shame or guilt or sadness. And we're kind of in a slower, energetic space. And then there's ways to process our emotions when we are activated, super emotionally charged. It's different, right? We honor our emotions differently. So think about when that panic is arising, how can you move? How can you go for a walk? How can you do stretching? How can you do jumping jacks? How can you dance? How can you put on music? How can you just flow and let the energy flow and not give in to the panic and let it build and build and build and build? Surrender to the fact that it's happening, but direct that energy to flow somewhere, right? Get that energy moving somewhere. Sometimes what I have my clients do is I walk up and down counting backwards from 60 to 1. Sometimes humming is really good because humming will move that energy, and you can do it while you're walking, you can do it while you're dancing, whatever it is. Get vibration going. That is going to help you so much in the moment of that panic, to neutralize the intensity of it, to get back to a grounded state, a more regulated state, so that you can continue showing up for yourself and doing the work and prove to yourself that there's something beyond that panic, right? And that you don't need to run from that. The more you run from that, the more scary it is. And it's just this cycle of running from it, being afraid of it, running from it, being afraid of it, and it builds and builds and builds. But know that your body is a safe place in the present moment. That's a really big thing. Your body is a safe place in the present moment. It may not have been in the past when you first learned to disconnect and disassociate. It may not have been safe in the moment that you experienced that trauma and that harm. And even if those emotions are stuck within you because they were never able to be processed, get your mind and your body in the same place, and you will see how safe you are in the present moment. Right now, I'm sitting in my bedroom. I can think about what I did on vacation, and I can feel like, how I felt when I was there. But the reality is, I'm in my bedroom. I'm sitting in my bedroom, in my home, recording this podcast, right? And that is the present moment. That's what's actually happening right now. Nobody's hurting me right now, right? I'm here alone talking to you and safe in this present moment. My body is safe, right? And that is what I had to keep anchoring myself into when I was processing my emotions first. And they were so intense, and I refused to move. I refused to distract myself. I refused to turn to those really cheap kind of ways of self-soothing. I just kept telling myself, you're okay right now. The reality is, the truth is, you're alone in your room. And yes, you're crying. And yes, this feels so hard, but your body's actually safe right now. So now is the time that you can release that emotion. You couldn't do it in that moment because you were experiencing harm then, but now you're safe in your room. You're okay right now. Now is the time that it gets to be processed and released forever so that you can move on and you can move forward with your life. That was so important for me, right? Again, all the tools that I talked about in today's episode in combination really, really supported me. And I know that they can support you because they have supported my clients. I want you to remember these tools. I want you to re-listen to this episode if you need to. Write them down, apply them in your day-to-day life. You will experience a difference. Right. And I'm sorry that it's taken me so many episodes to talk about this, but when I received a note from someone, and I hope that you're okay, the woman who reached out to me, and I'm thinking of you. If you're listening to this episode, I really just want you to know that there is something beyond that panic. The panic is part of the process, and it's about regaining control of that panic, remembering why you're doing this work. Remembering why it's so important to break these patterns and move on. And remember that in this present moment where you're panicking, you're actually safe. This is the moment where you can actually process and release these feelings, where your body has the chance to feel these sensations fully and let that energy dissipate. because you are safe. Get your mind and your body in the same place. Reach out and get support from someone. Get the thoughts out of your head. Get out of your head and into your body, into your surroundings. And be kind to yourself. I'm just going to full circle back to what I started this episode off by saying. Self-compassion is a key element to this emotional work. And it is the path to healing. The path forward is that softness, is that kindness, is that tolerance. And when the thoughts come up in your mind, know that there are other thoughts that you can choose. Be like, okay, what's a different thought we could choose right now? Let's choose a different thought right now. Sometimes you just have to do that. Sometimes you just have to do that. Sometimes you just have to go back to what's important right now. What's important to me? What's more important than this thought? And if you're like me and you're on a healing journey like I was, it was important to me to heal. It was important to me to find out what life could be like if I wasn't carrying all of this pain every day. And I can tell you right now, life can be really good. Life can be really good. And you can get to a place where you realize life could be even better than good. That it's possible no matter what happened. It is possible, but there is a process, and it doesn't feel great in the early days. I'll be honest with you. It's gonna be rough, but you don't have to go through it alone. Right? And it will get better. It will. So with that, I love you for listening. Let me know, reach out to me if this was supportive to you. Reach out to me if you need support. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have. If I have space for coaching clients, we can have a conversation around it. I just want you to know that Mighty Emotions, this platform, everything that I'm building is here to support you with your emotional well-being. You deserve to have peace within you. You deserve to know how good life can be. So keep showing up, keep doing the work. Don't quit, don't give up, and be kind to yourself. I will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It would mean so much if you could subscribe, leave a review, share with your friends and family, and let me know what you think by going to my Instagram at mighty_emotions and connecting with me and letting me know what you loved about today's episode. It really means a lot that you support this podcast, and I love coming to you each week with a new episode. So be sure to subscribe, let me know what you think, and take care of yourself.